Hey, I'm Kylie, ex-fitness coach turned mid-size fashion influencer. Whether it's just me or conversation with a friend, we have real conversations around success, failures, and living your best life. I created Ambition and Grace as a space to talk open and honestly, explore new perspectives, and ultimately empower yourself and others. Throw your headphones on and join the conversation. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Ambition and Grace. And again, if you're not watching, you should be, because there's not just one of me, but there's two of me, us. This is Anna. She has turned into a friend, but most importantly, she is a registered dietitian, and that is what, like, people went crazy in the questions. Yes, people asked so many questions. So really excited to just get to chat with her. I have all of the questions on my phone that we're going to be asking her about. But like I said, in my last video, hi, not to make it about me really quick, but I have dark hair. If you're watching, if you're watching, I might look a little different as well. I have dark hair now, but we're just going to kind of get right into it. And yeah, Anna, I'm going to let you introduce yourself really quick, and then we'll go from there.
I'm really excited because I feel like I get a lot of these questions.
Just make sure you talk close
in daily life. Sorry.
We're trying to go over all of this. Yeah.
I'm like, can we clip this to me? I'm just kidding. I get questions like this all the time, every day. And I think sometimes when I'm just in my day-to-day, I avoid a lot of the questions. So I think here it's answering them directly and really giving people the answers that they deserve, because nutrition can be so confusing and nuanced. So I'm really excited.
And there's so much to it.
Yes.
That's I get asked all the time to share food and macros and all that shit. And I refuse to do it, because as somebody who is in the coaching industry as well, I understand the importance that everybody is so different. Everybody's body responds differently. So I refuse to so that's why I'm like, okay, we need to have somebody who actually is an expert in this industry. And so we brought Anna on. But first, actually, have you always been interested in this stuff?
I would say growing up, I grew up in a household that was just loves food. And my mom always had an emphasis about a healthy relationship with food, which I think I was really fortunate in that regard, because
did she have a background in that?
No, she just, I don't know, just always had us read labels, but from a point of I want you to have a healthy relationship with food. We always had sweets, junk food in the house, but we always cooked home cooked meals. And she made a really good point to talk about it with us, where I feel like a lot of my friends, or even some people that grew up in that generation, it was the diet generation.
The diet culture and being skinny and not eating.
Totally. Yeah. And just always talking about other people's bodies. So I think I always had that background, but then just from loving to be active. And obviously my view on nutrition has evolved a lot, even in the last 5 to 10 years. But I would say it's just my passion for it gets greater every year. But I would say in terms of all of the confusion, sometimes it does get, and I think you offer an interesting perspective just with your journey, that you've seen, this is how this was my relationship with food, and now it's this.
Yeah.
And people look to you and want to know what you're doing. And you're like, yeah, I'm not you. You're not me. Right. And that's a really hard answer to give people sometimes.
People don't want to hear that answer.
No, they're like, give me the details.
Right. And I'm like, I will give you what I'm eating, but I'm not going to go over macros or any of that. Okay, interesting. So you thought, or you were aware of it early on. So then at what point were you like, okay, I want to make this a career?
Oh my gosh. This is such a funny question, because I'm never the person that was like, I knew I wanted to be this when I grew up. No, I was like, shoot. And I grew up in Wyoming, and it is such a wonderful place to grow up and have the opportunity to go to college, because the state pays for part of your college. Oh, it's crazy. Nice. So yeah, if anybody out there that wants to move to Wyoming, it's great. So I remember going to college and being like, I don't know what the hell I want to do. Yeah. This is crazy. And then about 2 years in, I took a nutrition class. It was one nutrition class that I was like, that would be so cool to get into. And then just learning more about RD, what they did, which is a registered dietitian, which I think maybe for some of your listeners is kind of confusing, especially in the world that we have access to information all over the internet.
Yeah.
With RD as a profession is very new.
Really?
In terms of other medical.
Okay.
Yeah, if we relate it to other specialties.
Okay.
Clinically, I would say more so. It's still in its infancy, and there's a lot of people stepping outside of the clinical world, which is kind of what I ended up doing, but I did have a start there. And I think realizing there's so much you could do with it, and subpopulations, and being very not going too into the weeds, but it was just kind of cool to be like, that's kind of like a newer profession that I never learned about growing up. And that's really kind of where it took off, I guess.
Okay. So then you went to college after all of that.
Yeah, after all that, I went to college.
Yeah, after she went to school.
Thanks, Wyoming.
What was your first job
out of school?
As a profession?
I worked at Billings Clinic here in Billings as an inpatient dietitian. So it was all clinical. It was people, acute setting. So they might be admitted for a couple of days. Maybe they have a GI bleed or they just got diagnosed with diabetes. That was the first one that would see them.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's what, when Trav had all of his stuff, that's what I'm trying to remember when we went to Denver for his GI bleed. I feel like there was, sorry, that's the ice falling off the she shed. He had, I think he had somebody who was telling him what he couldn't. Yeah, especially after his surgery. Actually, I do remember that now.
See, and that's a good example. Like, how crazy of a time is it when you're in the hospital? It's so stressful. There's people coming in and out.
Event, so many different doctors and nurses.
And then I remember thinking, like, the last thing people want to talk to, like, oh, a dietitian comes in, they're like, I almost just died.
Like Travis.
Yes, yeah.
He's like, just give me all the fucking food. I don't care.
Yes, yeah. They're like in pure survival mode. So I did that for a year, and then I went into oncology for a year, which was also insane.
So then how did you, was that like you were just interested in that and you're like, oh,
yeah, okay. I really enjoyed the inpatient oncology side of things.
Okay.
Just know it, like, such a big role that nutrition played during treatment and just like preserving lean muscle. And I did a lot of tube feeding at that time, which sounds crazy, but it was very rewarding, especially for certain patient populations that like literally helped them survive treatment. So it was kind of cool.
That's what I'm like, just thinking back to all of those times. Okay, so then is there like a deeper like, I feel like when it comes to like everything that we do, because for me personally, it's like my thing is so much deeper than it's like I'm not just showing or sharing clothes. So then is there like a deeper purpose, like fulfillment?
It's enjoyment, it's pleasure, it's getting together with friends and family. Like, food is, when you remove that from a situation, which I think sometimes nutrition science does, you take the human part out of it. And I think that's where I found a lot of reward, was getting to know people's lifestyles, what they enjoyed, and like connecting with them on a deeper level and finding out, holy cow, this is not me just telling you this is how much protein you need.
Right.
You know,
and the deeper underlying purpose. That's cool. So then I met Anna through the gym that I've been going to, Beartooth, which is a whole other topic.
We'll get the owner on the gym.
So it's supposed to be her and Dan that came on, but Dane is like also very busy. And so I was like, we're not going to keep pushing this back. Anna, you're coming on. So then how did all of that get into the mix? Because Anna now works at Beartooth. She's a trainer and also an RD. And so how did that get thrown in?
Long story short, I worked at the clinic for 5 years, went into weight management for a couple years, and I did love my position there, but I was also training at the gym that was once a CrossFit gym. It is not anymore. It's really hard to break that stigma. We've rebranded, but at the time it was COVID it was 2020, the pandemic. And so I was seeing a lot of patients virtually. And Dane had been bugging me since I met him like 10 years ago. I would love to hire an RD.
How did you and Dane meet?
I just started at the gym.
Okay, so you've been going to the gym for 10 years? Yeah. The gym's been around for 10 years?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Actually, almost 11 now.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Dang. Okay.
But that was when it was like, you know, in its infancy. It was pretty small, and I had just moved here, and my husband and I were just looking for a gym.
So then did you come, like, you graduated from Wyoming and then you got a job at Billings, and that's how you moved here?
So as a dietitian, you have to do an internship, which now the requirements are a 2-year master's degree. At the time when I went through, it was like an 18-month internship through MSU.
Okay.
And they sent me to Billings. So part of my internship was at Billings, and then I just got a job after that. Okay. So that's what brought us up to Montana.
Okay. Where's he from?
He's from Salt Lake City.
Oh. Right. So then did he go to school in Wyoming too? And that's where you met?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's from Utah, but he is, I know everyone always asks like, okay, is he LDS? Like, he's
Mormon?
Not. Is he Mormon? I'm like, no, I didn't marry a Mormon, but
one of my girlfriends used to be Mormon. So yeah.
Yeah. He gets all the questions.
All of them. Okay. So then you guys you came up here, you were going to the gym. Dane was like, I want an RD, and you were just like, yeah, that's cute.
At the time I was like, sweet, I would make a living at the gym. And of course and most aspiring RDs are like, private practice would be so awesome, but insurance reimbursement's really difficult. And like when you think about like, how am I going to see patients on a day-to-day basis, it just wasn't even in my mind at the time.
Yeah.
But during the pandemic, when we started doing more virtual visits, and it started to make more sense.
Yeah. I could see it more.
And Dane's vision was always, he wanted to be more evidence-based, which you know this being in the fitness industry. It's so highly unregulated. It's so easy to get people that know enough just to be dangerous giving out nutrition advice. So he was really like, no, I want an RD. I'm not going to hire anyone else.
I think it was the girl from Utah, if I'm correct. There was she called herself a personal trainer and was giving like meal plans and all that, but she was just copying and pasting all of the meal plans for her clients. I swear it was Utah. 90%. It doesn't matter. Anyways,
probably.
The state ended up going and suing her because people were like getting fucked up from it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like knowing enough just to be dangerous, or like it seems so innocent to give out meal plans. Right. And this is where you, with your background, you're like, this is why I don't just give out advice to anybody, because it's so individualistic. Like, I don't know if somebody, maybe they do have high blood sugar and they're undiagnosed.
So much, especially when you start getting into, I mean, like say Travis, for example, Travis's case or whatever he is, case, right?
Case, yeah, his case.
He has so many different underlying things happening. So like, I could not imagine if somebody had come to me and was like, I don't have a gallbladder, I don't have a spleen, like all of this shit.
Yeah, you're like
blood thinner, and then I would be like, oh my God, I could not imagine me not having any back on any of that. Yeah. So yeah.
Like, you know, you can have these fitness influencers that do know a lot about nutrition, and I do value that knowledge, but it's the background.
It gets so dicey.
It gets very scary. So Utah and all of the states except for, I think it's Colorado and Florida right now, don't quote me on that, have state licensure for nutritionists. So you have to be licensed through the state to practice.
Okay.
Although you're probably like thinking, there's a lot of people, it gets kind of really sticky because there are a lot of people with, you know, maybe like a 2-year nutrition degree, and you have to,
like a is it NASM, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like all of the smaller degrees that you can do super quickly, or not degrees, but certificates.
Yeah, exactly. That you could do in a year or 2 years, or even
a couple months.
Yeah. Like a weekend certification. So it is tough. I've once in the last 10 years have turned somebody into the state, but it was a very difficult process. So
can we talk about that? That's interesting. I'm like,
it was terrible time. Well, and I was a brand new RD, and I was probably like bitter about other people. I'm like,
when you just worked your ass off.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second, this is not fair. And so I've definitely evolved from that mindset. But at the time I was like, this is not safe. Like why anybody thinks they can just be handing out meal plans, charging a ton of money. It's already an industry that rips people off. It plays off of emotions. I mean, just think about like the supplement industry, marketing. So it is kind of tough in that degree, but there's levels at which you can do it. So basically they consider medical nutrition therapy, which would be something like Travis having medical diagnoses that you are counseling him through and giving nutrition recommendations. That's illegal. Giving out recommendations is totally fine, but that could be a prescribed meal plan, right? So it gets it gets really sticky. Yeah. So
not trying to scare anybody, but it's just like, it's so important. And like I said, like I want to keep drilling that through people's heads, because I think people truly do just like take it for granted, like you're saying. So.
Yeah. And how easy it is to get nutrition advice online. I mean, even myself, I follow tons of influencers and nutrition professionals, fitness professionals. And it is like, you really have to be smart about where you're getting that information from and especially
source.
If you're going to pay for their services,
to make sure that you're getting what you need back in return, and not just some.
And you're not getting a generic plan.
Right.
Like you genuinely can get ripped off pretty easily.
Yes.
Like you could have typed that into ChatGPT, but you know, that's a whole nother topic.
Okay. Like keep talking closer.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
I keep getting on Anna. Sorry. I have my computer down here. So, and that's what I like see, that her stuff is like barely moving.
You're like, she's not coming back. She can't talk into the mic. I'm like,
so I also want to, because you specifically were more, like you said, like in GI and stuff like that. And so Trav gave me permission that we could talk about his shit a little bit.
I love it.
Yeah. So I don't even know. Okay. Not going to go all the way back because it's complicated and it's like 4 years ago.
Yeah. His history is insane.
It's crazy. Right. So basically earlier this year, well, that's kind of like what actually kicked off like us taking more seriously, like getting back into a healthier routine. It's not this year, it's freaking last year now. So yeah, last March, basically, end of February, doesn't matter. So he started like dealing with pretty bad stomach pains. Okay, we're getting so personal. Sorry, babe. Like, I'm going to just say it. But basically, he like anything that he would eat, it was straight up going straight through him. Like, he would eat something and then it would like be in the toilet 10 like minutes a fire later. Hose. Yes. Yeah. So he was losing so much weight. I think he had lost like 30 pounds or something like that because his body wasn't absorbing any nutrition, and we could not figure it out for the life of us. And it was so frustrating because so that was in March of like when the pain, like he started getting in really, really bad pains, and we were about to leave for my birthday trip to Mexico. And it was literally like days before. I get woken up in the middle of the night and he's hovering over me. He's like, everything's okay, but I'm going to go to the emergency room. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And for him, like, he was like, grew up on a farm, kid, was a Marine. So like for him to actually be going to the ER in the middle of the night, I knew something was wrong. But then I had Izzy at home and I had to take her. So like I stayed, but of course I didn't go back to sleep. Super long story short, it took we actually kind of have an answer now, but we really don't. But basically all summer long, he was going and doing so many different tests and they weren't finding anything. And it was so frustrating because I just felt so bad for him because he literally couldn't eat.
It was like very low quality of life.
Yes. Yeah. I felt so bad for him. And then I didn't want to go to Mexico because I'm like, the fuck, we're going to the hospital in Mexico, like to be held for ransom or all the crazy shit that happens there. But when he went to the doctor, after that, they just prescribed him pain pills. Yep. And he was like, I don't want pain pills. Like, I want to be able to eat and not be in pain. And so when was it? It was like the end of the summer is when he finally
I feel like he reached out in August.
Okay, yeah. So like end of the summer, he was like, okay, let's try to like actually, because the doctors literally were doing, and I don't want to like have this be a shit on the doctors, right? Okay, like I'm very grateful for our doctors, but it was just as somebody who's like witnessing like one of the most important people in their life just having, like you said, like such poor quality of life. It was just so frustrating. So Travis goes to Anna and you were able to like help him significantly within your first
I feel like it was in that first week.
Yeah,
he, like,
it was
started feeling
insane.
Better.
So basically you can take it over because I don't know shit about any of this.
No, you do. I mean, Travis is a really good success story, and he's so unique in the situations like I said, he had at hand.
Bladder, no spleen, blood thinners, like had AFib at one point. It was just crazy.
Which even if we just like break it down to just not having a gallbladder, it's really common to have GI issues after that. So when he first came, I was like not surprised, but then the severity of it was very concerning. And for me, I think this is one of those cases where having that clinical experience did help me because we collaborated with the doctors, the interdisciplinary team. So understanding he would send me labs and the notes from the doctor. So I already knew what he had done and the scans that had been done, the procedures, and really not finding anything.
So crazy.
Is like, what triggered this? And this is the frustrating part about GI stuff. There's probably no one answer, and he probably still doesn't have an answer, but we had to alleviate his symptoms.
That he I'll tell you after. I'm like, he doesn't like, I'm like all of his stuff out there.
Here's everything. I'm
like, thanks, babe. Anyways.
Right? That it's like multifactorial. But for me, as like from a nutrition standpoint, I'm like, okay, let's control what we can control. And right now we have to get you to stop losing weight because he has a ton of lean muscle. He was losing a lot of lean muscle. And
it was crazy.
I don't know if your listeners know this, but Travis is very health conscious, like in terms of like the things that he's done in the past. He has a lot of knowledge around nutrition. Like I don't get people that often that come through my door and is like, I know I ate 30 grams of protein and this and that, and like he knows his numbers.
Has a journal that he
so that's rare for me, but it's also fun because I'm like, this is great, like we can really dial things in. It was easy to be like, all right, let's look at these foods first that cause complications, and for whatever reason he was very, very sensitive to non-nutritive sweeteners. So like things that are in.
Well, he was doing like sugar-free. And I think that's something that we should talk about too. I mean, it's different for everybody, but with him being like the more health conscious type of person, I mean, like sugar-free everything. And that was something that you ended up figuring out.
For sure. And for him, he was almost one of those that comes to me and I'm like, all right, let's dial it back. We don't need to be this crazy. Like there's roles that processed foods can play in our diet. And also from a calorie standpoint, you need those calories. Do not be afraid to have some regular sugar. Your body needs the fuel, needs the nutrition. He's active and he wasn't even able to be active.
No, because he was so depleted.
Yes. So we did a couple things. One of the interventions was fiber. And in terms of the intensity of fiber, we gave him dry oatmeal, which sounds bizarre.
Yeah. When he brought home, I was like, what? And it was like basically like horse oats.
Yes.
I was like,
it has to be dry, old-fashioned oats. And we used to do this so when I was in oncology, we did a lot with general surgery. So people that did have these unexplained GI symptoms. Basically what happens is when your gut's damaged, we have all these microvilli and they're like little fillers. And that's where all that good bacteria lives and slows digestion. Well, when your gut's damaged, it turns literally into a fire hose.
Okay.
So all that's damaged and it's just going through. So our first goal is to slow that down. So slowing it down with some type of fiber.
And that's what the oats did.
Yeah. So the oats and I don't even know if that really made a huge difference, but that was our first goal. It's like, okay, this nutrition has to stay in your body longer than an hour.
And that like helps expand or what does it do? Okay.
So basically like think if you put oats in dry old-fashioned oats in a pan of water and just let them sit there, it would absorb all that water. So that's what it's doing in your gut. It's just bulking.
Okay.
Which can be like if I have individuals dealing with some type of diarrhea or loose stool, and doctors love Metamucil. I have no idea why. I've had no success with it. Like I love to use real food, although there's a place and time for supplements for sure. So we started with that and it was a cup a day. Let's see how that works. And then the next thing was I wanted him to look at everything he was eating and drinking, what type of fake sugars were in there. There's a specific class of fake sugars that end in tall, like xylitol, sorbitol. They're called sugar alcohols and they're like 10,000 times sweeter than sugar. And they're really good to put in protein bars because it makes them sweet and taste good. So an example would be like Quest bars. Quest products have a lot of sugar alcohols in them. And for some individuals, it just causes terrible diarrhea.
That is crazy. Because then people, okay, keep going.
So, and even gum, chewing gum, I've had people be really sensitive to chewing gum. So those sugar alcohols, and there's a place and time for sugar-free items, right? And here's like a perfect nuance to nutrition. There's no absolutes. And I think one of the questions that was asked, like the first one that I loved, it was like, why isn't nutrition a science? Why is it so complicated? Yeah, I know, not to skip ahead, but it's like, this is a prime example of how individualized this is, especially for Travis, because he was really sensitive to these. But I might have somebody who's dealing with high blood sugars. They're not as active, right? Their lifestyle's so different. Their genetics are different. Their disease state's different that I would recommend these for.
Yeah.
So long story short, we cut those out.
Yes. And he's like literally night and day difference. Night and day difference. Except for Travis, anytime he's ever like had a procedure done or something, he's always like, I've never felt better. And that's when I'm like, oh my God, but then we have to go to the doctor. And so
you're like,
I'm
how
not
extreme is this?
Yes. I'm not going to jinx it. But like truly those two things that were like so simple and so small. But like, again, to somebody who surface level knowledge, like they wouldn't have known that.
So, and it is tough. I think from a clinical standpoint to truly understand, and the gut is so complicated and we're learning more and more, but like the gut microbiome, even as a dietitian, I'm like, we have so much to learn.
Well, going to the opposite, that's what it's like. Travis and I could not be more opposite. So like Travis can shit 17 times a day and I could only hope for that. I'm on the other end to where like it's been something my whole life. And so I started getting colonics because I'm like, that's the only way that I'm shitting at this point. Sorry, this is now a shitting podcast.
Well, usually with nutrition, we talk a lot about poop.
So, but I want to start working with you to start like really, because I just eat whatever Travis tells me to eat basically. Like, but
But he cooks really good meals. He would tell me what he made. I was like, dang, I'm coming over.
And so like now it's getting to the point where like I'm eating like factor meals and stuff like that. And like things have been helping. And then like I just got my hormones checked. And like, so I'm really diving in deeper to try to figure it out. But again, of like when I talked to my doctor about this like a year ago, literally she was like, and I actually loved my doctor. So I was really bummed when she just told me to take Miralax every day. And that's when I'm like, I don't want to just take Miralax for the rest of my life. So for somebody who's on the other end of like more constipated and things like that, like what are recommendations? Again, we just got done talking about how everybody's so different, but like what are some just like top of the mind?
You bring up a perfect example of couples like dealing with two different like they come to me and I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys, how frustrating is that? Yeah. And you're like, dang, I wish I could go that much, because it's like there's nothing more frustrating than constipation.
Painful and like uncomfortable. And then when you start going into like even deeper of like brain fog and like anxiety and depression, and I'm like, all of that, me.
Yeah.
So
which they're finding a huge like that gut head relationship is huge.
Yes, that it's like your second mind is what
we produce serotonin in our gut. Like a lot happens in our gut that maybe we can't necessarily control, and some of it is genetic. Low motility is definitely, you know, if you've dealt with it your whole life, you're probably like, yeah, I'm like, my colon just like doesn't want to move very quickly, even feeding it the healthiest of foods.
Yes, I mean,
stress, sleep, all of those things.
Like probably 70-30 if I had to say.
Which is like how I want people to approach nutrition. I don't, because I think Travis is a good example of me being like, even as a dietitian, I'm like, you be healthier than me. Like, what do you want me to tell you? You know, but I want that relationship with food is utmost important, because if you don't have that first, whatever you do, you won't maintain.
Well, I learned that when I was bodybuilding. So bodybuilder, whatever, for 5 years. And that's initially what, I mean, for other reasons, but at the end of it, my relationship with food was so toxic. And especially when you go to that extreme of like the food, just how little calories towards the end that you're eating and how much exercise and stuff you're doing. But it got to a point, actually the first season, like I actually started like going and ordering a burger, eating it in my car, and then feeling guilty about it, and then going and doing even longer exercise, it like 30 extra minutes of cardio when I was already doing 90 minutes of cardio. I mean, it was crazy. So then that was kind of when I was like, okay, when in my off season, I'd be like, if I want a fucking cookie, I'm just going to have the cookie. Because if I keep pushing it off, I'm going to binge eat and eat 100%. The whole thing of cookies. But then also like after the 5 years was done and I was like, okay, like this just isn't fulfilling to me anymore. I literally was at Travis's sister's house and I was on prep and I had my cold chicken in my fucking plastic Ziploc baggie, and all of them were eating pizza, and I was mad that they were eating pizza in front of me. And then that's when I was like, I'm done. Like I just need to be done. I'm good. So yeah, going into with like the healthy relationship of food.
I actually really appreciate you sharing that, because I think whether it's as extreme as prepping for a competition, or it's just prepping for a wedding, or, you know, I see people
or going on vacation.
Yes, vacation. I see all of it. And I think it is one of the hardest things to work on. That's why we're all still working on it. Yeah. And it's not just like curable, right? It's not like I'm cured. I don't have these thoughts, these feelings around food anymore. But when we start viewing food as the enemy, and that every little calorie that goes in our body is going to affect the way we look or we think, that is a very dangerous.
So this actually brings us to a perfect like intro to the questions. We had a question that said, tips on tracking when you've had an ED, eating disorder, earlier in life. It's been tough on mental health. So yeah, let's talk about it.
This is a very heavy subject for some people. Yeah. So knowing that some of the stuff that we say could be a trigger, even just seeing a podcast about nutrition from your favorite influencer could be a trigger. But in terms of tracking, I think that's probably the most popular way people are approaching nutrition right now, right? Macros are huge, which is a big buzzword for just a balanced meal.
Yeah.
Thank you, plate method. They already had that. But I think so. We think tracking is what helps me get results. That's what I need to do. That's what it feels like when we're seeing all these people track. When in reality, if tracking is a trigger for you, it's the last thing you need to do. It's going to give you diminishing returns. It's going to be a trigger. You're going to spiral into obsessing about food again, controlling over food, whatever it was for you previously. Those don't go away, you know?
I think that's also, thank you for bringing that up too, of like such a reminder of, again, for somebody, I mean, I think it's natural for everybody, like
totally,
to have some sort of struggle with food. But like, if you're somebody that's listening and food is a really hard and sensitive subject for you, then I just like want to acknowledge that. And I hope that if anything, this just helps. I always say that I like talking about things to help make it more like real. And when somebody shares their story, it helps acknowledge other people and it takes the shame out of it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And so just like acknowledging that, and if you relate to that, but I just, with you saying that, I was like, oh, that's such a good time to maybe stop and acknowledge that really quick too.
Well, it is good even for people that are like, you're a dietitian, you must eat so healthy. And of course I work on my relationship with food. You
look amazing. Yes.
But and I love to fuel for like activity, but I also enjoy a weekend. I love vacation. I love a margarita. Like,
well, and like you said, it can be such a experience of like with your friends and your family and vacation.
Totally. And recognizing that, I think, does give you some freedom. But what we see are the loudest voices telling us tracking has gotten me this far. Tracking does this for me. And it's really hard to share. An intuitive eating is kind of a buzzword, but it's hard to share that journey because it can be really personal. It can be really raw. But I think if we start thinking about food as fuel, as cliche as that sounds, you stop thinking about like these numbers that are telling me this is the amount I need to eat. I'm not looking at food as fuel anymore. I'm looking at it as a number.
Right. And even just, again, from somebody who was bodybuilding, and it just, when I was on, like, not on, but like around that 1,800, 2,000 calories, but like I said, working out for hours at a time, like I was miserable.
And your hormones were probably like, what are you doing to me?
Yes, I was miserable to be around. And that's when I was coaching at Orange Theory. And that's when people, like, I thought it, actually, I didn't think it was funny then because I was just super irritable. That's why people would be like, oh, it's Kylie's peak week, like don't piss her off. But it's just like, that's not fun to be that kind of person. Again, acknowledging that everybody's journey looks different, but looking back on my journey, that's why I was just like, I'm so grateful for that journey because it taught me so much. But also that was one of like the darkest parts of my adulthood.
When people from the outside were like, you look so good, you're so happy. And deep down, it's like,
it was so isolating because then it got to the point to where I didn't want to go out to dinner with my friends or family anymore because, again, I didn't want to put myself in the situation of like being tempted to have a cocktail or to have something that, and then it was also such a pain in the ass, like having to, not with the chicken, but like don't cook it in butter and shit like that. It was just exhausting.
Food was not flavorful anymore.
And that was always actually my joke, especially with Travis, that it was like when I was on prep, even kind of now I'm still the same way, but I'm like, if you would have told me to like eat a dog turd, like I'm just that person that's like, if that's what I need, like I don't care. But Travis could not be more opposite. Anyways, so what is the final thought on the question with, I'm like, with just like,
I would say, I would suggest is, really looking at tracking is why do I want to track? Am I wanting to change my body? Am I just wanting to make healthier habits? Because there's thousands of other ways we could approach nutrition without tracking.
Right. I feel like a lot of it comes down to control. Like it's a part 100%. Of your life and that's
if any of us are type A, you understand that.
But of like when I think looking back now, why I enjoyed bodybuilding so much is because for so long, a big portion of my life, I wasn't in control. In bodybuilding, I was in control of my workouts, what I was eating, all of that. So I think that's such a good question to ask yourself of like, okay, well, why am I wanting to do this?
Totally. And really investigating that before just jumping right in. And then also looking at, well, if I just want to eat healthier, is it that I just need to eat a better breakfast every morning that actually makes me feel good throughout the day?
Having like the smaller snacks throughout the day or something.
Totally.
Like that.
Thinking like, am I just not eating enough throughout the day? Like, what is it? Do I need to add in more vegetables? Do I need to have plan ahead a little bit better? So I think sometimes looking at food as fuel and really just examining why you're wanting to make changes to nutrition.
And how to add it into your life that works for you.
Totally. Looking at your schedule. Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Do you exercise? Do you not exercise? Like, I think sometimes we see something online and we are like, I need to adapt to that. That doesn't need to adapt to me.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I love that. Good. Okay. So now we're going to get into the questions. The first one that Anna kind of talked about in the beginning was, why is there so much variation in advice when nutrition is supposed to be a science? Which I feel like we kind of already talked about, but just to touch
I do love that. Just to briefly go over it, because I think I get this question all the time. One, yes, it's a science. Two, it's very poorly funded compared to pharmaceuticals. Our research is limited on nutrition, and it truly is in its infancy still. When we look at other sectors that are studied in science, we have so much to learn.
I'm hoping with JFK coming in, I'm really kind of have my fingers crossed that's going to help just a little
If it becomes a priority and we get more funding for it, for sure. But then at the same time, nutrition studies are really messy because they involve people.
And everybody's so different.
Yes. And everybody's so different. There's genetics, there's lifestyle, there's preferences, male, female, hormones. Like, it is crazy. And I think what really frustrates people is when the recommendations change throughout the years. But what's cool is, like, we're always learning and evolving, and that's part of science. Is there's new studies that come out. Oh, we learned more about this. We learned more about the gut microbiome. Yeah. We might have recommended this at once. And unfortunately, a lot of people doing the research are the companies selling the products. Right. So it feels a little, that's a whole nother subject, but it feels a little like shady to a lot of people. Like, should I trust what these recommendations are? But themes across the board in terms of nutrition science, vegetables are always good. Fruits are always good. Protein and we need carbohydrates and fat. So, like, most of the time, the themes are similar. It's just the nuances that change.
Can we also talk really quick about carbs? I feel like now we're like getting better on education, but for so long, even in the early 2000s, to where it was like the whole stigma with carbs.
We grew up in the
carbs aren't good. And so like just quickly touching base on why carbs are important for you.
From a primitive standpoint, like I was thinking about you like wanting that cookie. It's our brain's main fuel source is carbohydrates. And we're always seeking some type of quick energy because that's what's going to fuel our energy.
Interesting. Okay.
So when people tell me they have brain fog or irritability, the first place I look is carbohydrates. One, because most of us are like, I don't want to eat too many carbs. I don't want to gain weight. That's what they've been associated with. Instead of being like, I need carbohydrates to fuel me throughout my workday. I'm more productive. And not even in terms of physical activity, right? Like, people are like, oh, well, she's a runner. She can eat those carbs. It's like, no, you also need those carbohydrates. Yes. If you're working all day, if you want to be a productive human being, if you want to be awake and not irritable. So carbohydrates play so many roles. And I just want to note that carbohydrates, from a calorie standpoint, if we're talking weight management, have the same amount of calories per gram as protein.
That's crazy.
So when we're cutting out carbohydrates unnecessarily, we're just like cutting off our nutrition supply to our brain.
Right. Okay. So, see, just wanted to throw that out.
If you have a teenage kid at home, like, please send them to school with some carbs.
Literally, is so Travis, again, that's what even this morning she was packing her lunch and he was like, you need more protein. Where are your carbs at? And that's what I mean. He's like all about it. Okay. So, and that's also another good entrance into, or not entrance, whatever. Like you know what I mean?
We're entering into it.
Into question number 2, which is where to start if you don't know how to make a balanced meal.
Yeah, I think it's overwhelming, again, because of all of the mixed reviews you get out there. But I want you to like erase all of the noise that you've heard. And I'm sure I'll have people listening to this that will say, what about keto? What about intermittent fasting? And
God, we could be here for hours.
I actually have to like stop myself. If you're looking at just building a balanced meal, it truly is about not cutting out any of the food groups and thinking of it as a pie chart, just as Travis was doing with Izzy. Do you have a protein? Do you have a carbohydrates in your protein? Is there fat? If not, let's add it in. Can you add a fruit or vegetable? And just looking at, I think that's why macros got so popular. Yeah. It truly helped people build balanced meals. But also, I could follow a macro plan and eat Quest bars. And
there was a girl when I was bodybuilding that she like fit a Snickers bar into her to like prove that. Yeah. Anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. I could eat donuts. And like, so from a balance standpoint, when we want fruits, vegetables, all those micronutrients, which for us in our convenienced world, a box of crackers is always going to be easier than slicing up a cucumber, right? So it is looking at that balance, which also you could have the crackers and the cucumber. Yeah. Okay. You want it all.
It's crazy.
I think the elimination is what can we add in to make a balanced meal? So like, what kind of protein do you like? Just think through, like, do I like yogurt? No. Okay. Well, do I like eggs? Okay. Well, let's go with eggs and toast. Savory. Do I want it to be salty? Some days I might want sweet. So playing on, like, don't fight your intuition. Don't fight your cravings. Don't fight what you enjoy. Because if I eat a breakfast that influence posted, but I'm like, this tastes like dog crap. Like, what? I'm not going to eat it again the next day.
Right. I think that's so important too, of like having the different options, like you said, of like, okay, like for me, when I was bodybuilding, I would, but also now I'm kind of questioning it. So I would do sugar-free jelly on my, of like the days that like I wanted more of like a sweet breakfast, I would put the sugar-free jelly on top of my eggs. But then like the days that I just wanted more savory, I would do like the hot sauce or right? Yeah, savory. Yeah.
Yep.
So things like that. So just having different options, unless you're the person that can like eat the same thing every day, which
there are those.
That was
for
me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, having like the different options of that.
For
so
sure.
like you said, like the proteins, the carbs, and like what works most for you. So then so if somebody is like, I have no clue where to start.
Yeah.
Like I literally have no idea, but I want to start looking into that. One, you can reach out to Anna, which we'll talk about at the end, and she can help you with that. But if they're like, okay, like I just like right now, is there like a trusted website that you can plug stuff into, or like what do you suggest? Or is it just like, no?
I mean, there's definitely websites out there that have enough information to help you build a plan, as long as there's tons of RDs online that write blogs or can make an example day. I've actually done it in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like, write me out a balanced meal plan that has adequate carbohydrates, protein, and fat for a moderately active female age 30.
Okay.
Like, it will actually spit out some ideas. Because if you're struggling with ideas, I think that's what people are like, I just don't even know if it's not anything that you've ever planned before. But the good news is, if you're alive right now, you've been eating.
Yeah.
So you're eating something.
You know something. Yeah.
So start with what you're doing. If you're like, I only do a bagel and cream cheese in the morning, it's like, okay, there's some carbs and fat, but how could we add protein to it? Can you add an egg to it? Could you put cottage cheese on it?
A slice of salmon.
Yes, some salmon. Like, whatever food you like, which also cottage cheese is highly underrated on a
Travis,
piece of toast.
Oh my God. Like, he's
with everything bagel seasoning, it's
with
so good.
Cottage cheese. Yes.
But yeah, I know not everybody likes it, but it is finding what are you already doing and build off of that.
Okay. That's a great example. I feel like most, like you said, so many of us are already eating the carbs because like you said, it's so quick, easy, like
totally
primitively. So, okay.
Yeah. So that's why you do want carbs, because you're wired to want carbs.
So let's maybe start looking at like the fats and like adding nuts or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Like in your Greek yogurt, how many people are like, I ate a Greek yogurt for breakfast, but I'm hungry an hour later. It's like, yeah, because it was only protein.
Add some oats in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Some
oats.
nuts. I like the nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, the granola.
That's
you
what
could
I was
add some berries. Yeah. What, one of those grains
that looks like nuts. Okay. So then that's also another good entryway into, is protein as important as they are making it?
Okay, I'm going to say yes, because protein is extremely important to build muscle, to repair. It keeps us feeling fuller longer. So that's why I always like, when I'm building breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we usually start with the protein source.
Okay.
So it is really important. And what we're finding is, just with our convenience foods, if you're not paying attention to protein, we're under eating protein, especially a lot of females that I see. And I don't know if it's just preference, but like, yeah, for me, I'd prefer to have a bagel and cream cheese than like meat for breakfast,
Yep. Same.
So it's work to find that protein. So it is really important. Should it downplay the other nutrients? No, not necessarily, because they also tightly help regulate our hunger and fullness cues too, right? Because if I just had protein for breakfast, I'm going to be hungry in another couple hours if I didn't have fat and carbs.
Right.
Or if I'm demanding a lot out of my body and I want to do a workout after work and I didn't eat carbohydrates all day, I'm not going to feel good during that workout. It's going to be difficult for me to build muscle.
Okay.
So protein's always like our building block of muscle, but I always tell people we can't build that muscle. That protein can't build muscle without carbohydrates.
Okay.
Because our body's priority is always fuel.
Yep. And then that's my coach would always have me eat like the rice cakes and stuff like that after my workouts to help with the muscle repair.
So it is like, I think bodybuilders have the science of like, they know how, like, you built muscle.
How to do it.
Yes. It's just like, we're not robots. And that's a hard lifestyle.
Your body can't maintain that.
Yeah.
That's what.
It's not enough.
No.
Hormonally and things like that. And I think it's cool to watch muscle build. And that's where with females, I'm always looking at how can we get more lean muscle and stop talking about losing weight or fat. I want us to build muscle mass so that you feel better, you feel stronger, you have more energy. It's going to help your hormones as we age, like hello perimenopause. That's going to help all of those things. And protein does play that role, but you need all the others.
It's not
too.
as important, right? Okay. That was one of the big things too that I would see as a coach, as well as women would actually start gaining weight. And then that's why you'd have to like break it down of like, okay, but then like doing body scans and stuff like that, you're actually gaining muscle. And then that's why I fucking hate the scales.
Yes,
like I cannot stand scales. Right. So not trusting the scales in that sense all the way as well.
Because we're not robots. Our bodies are going to fluctuate every single day.
It's like the time of the month and like your body is holding more water and stuff like that. So like if you're still using a scale, I mean, I don't like using a scale. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Get it out of your house.
But that's what I'm like, I don't want to tell anybody.
In my professional opinion,
I think it's such bullshit. Okay. This is also really good too. You picked out, okay, so we had so many questions. These were the best questions. So many questions. So I just sent them to Anna and I was like, pick out the top 10. Otherwise, like I said, we'd literally be here for hours. Another question was eating in a deficit. I'm moody / less patient. I think that's just me every day. But what gives? How do I get past it? Yeah.
I love this question because for one, it does show you what a role nutrition plays in our daily life and our relationships. And when we start to make changes, sometimes we don't think how it's going to impact our family or our loved ones. Most definitely, it's really common to feel hunger. Sometimes anxiety can come out. Okay. You can get more anxious, like an elevated heart rate. It affects our hormones like cortisol, that stress hormone. I might be more stressed when I start cutting back on calories. And I think we're talking in terms of somebody who is wanting to make healthier choices. Like we want you to make these healthier choices, but sometimes what happens is we end up restricting too much and our body can't keep up, and we're still demanding a lot out of our body physically and mentally. Yeah. So being irritable is totally normal. That's the first sign of being like, okay, I'm probably not giving my body enough fuel. I'm hungry. It's hunger, and don't fight against hunger. I always tell people hunger always wins. And if you continue to fight against it, whether it's in a week or 3 months, it's gonna come back because you need fuel for your body. Right. And this isn't going to feel sustainable. So the biggest thing is to look at schedule. How long are you going between meals? If you're going more 3-4 hours between meals, you're probably not giving your body enough. And this is not for somebody who's just like, I'm not talking, most of you aren't just like sitting on the couch all day, right? Like we're busy, we're working out, we're working. Taking
the kids.
Yes, we're dropping kids off and it's constant. So the demands that you have on your body, I think sometimes we're just not forgiving ourselves enough of like, I need that fuel throughout the day. Am I fueling for my activity?
Well, and then I think like a question to the question is like, so she's eating in a deficit. So then like,
also why?
Why are you eating in the deficit? And then like you said, are you in too much of a deficit? Maybe if you haven't consulted with like a professional about it. And so, I think there's like more answers.
It can be very complicated.
That we need, but I think that's a good starting point to what you said.
You bring up a good point is like, and I'm not anybody who is wanting to make healthier choices, and weight loss can be a side effect, but if that's your only reason you're eating in a deficit, it's not going to be sustainable. Right. If you're truly making healthier choices and you want to see body composition changes, we still have to fuel for your activity for it to be sustainable. And I think that's what's so hard with nutrition, because it is a calorie equation, right? In order to actually lose body fat, we do have to eat in a deficit, right? But it's how we achieve that deficit. And that's where the human part comes in, right, to the science.
And then, like I said, so many more questions. So I think that's good getting that as far as we can take it. But I really liked this question too. How to fight constant cravings for junk food, which we kind of already talked about of like my outtake from that is just have the cookie if you want the cookie. Cause like I said, like 2 hour at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to be in the pantry, like eating it by like a little grumbling.
Fighting against it is one of the worst things you can do. Yeah. And of course, like, again, of course, we're encouraging you to make healthy choices, and we're not saying go out and eat whatever you want. No, right. But if anybody's ever read Intuitive Eating, it's one of like the first books that was written, and maybe we could put it in the show notes. She actually has her clients, this dietitian, eat their favorite food every single day that they've been restricting, to realize that like is the novelty wearing off? Am I enjoying it more thinking about it?
Right.
And avoiding
you want
it?
what you can't have.
Yes, totally. And then when you allow yourself permission, you're like, this is great, but also, do I need to overindulge on it? That obsession that comes into mind. So one thing you'd want to look at, are you eating enough? Like if you're craving sweets, sugar, fat, salt,
usually you're
probably not eating enough.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, because that's what, or when I'm tired, I'm usually craving like the sugar and this, but then that's what it was like, oh, it's because I needed like that quick pick me up. Insulin spike or whatever.
And when you think about sleep too, that's a whole nother part of the equation we haven't discussed, right? But like, you're not getting adequate sleep, you're going to be craving more of those foods that give us quick energy, but we crash. And two, it is allowing yourself to have these things, giving yourself permission. And I have plenty of people who are like, I'm afraid to give myself permission. That's okay.
Yeah.
Give it to yourself anyway and see what happens.
And then that's what, there's something else that reminds me of when I was the head coach, we would have to go to the conferences or whatever. And during one of the lunches, like there was like chocolate pudding or something like that. And I was on prep and I was sitting there and I was like, God, I want that so bad. Yeah, I want it. And Amanda, she was the regional coach and she's like, it's chocolate pudding still going to be here once you're done with your prep. And it was like this like aha moment. I was like, oh my God, you're so right.
So that's actually a good point. They call it the Last Supper mentality.
Okay.
That literally, and I would say this is a perfect time to be talking about this because it's the new year.
Yeah.
And most of us really, I mean, the holidays are crazy. We have parties, we're with family, we're eating foods we don't normally eat. And in a way, we're like, oh my gosh, like I'm never going to eat these foods again. It's like that Last Supper mentality. Instead of being like, oh, if like there's a cookie there tomorrow, I could have it.
Right. Or I can stop by Crumble Cookie and get a cookie later this week.
Allowing yourself that permission instead of being like, this is the only time I'm going to allow myself to do this. And we don't have those conscious thoughts, but really thinking about that. And I think you start looking at it differently. And in some regard, you start respecting it a little bit better because you're like, a homemade chocolate chip cookie tastes so good and I'm going to eat it when it's there.
Yes.
But like, do I want the one that's been like the store-bought sugar cookie? Like maybe, but maybe that's not as important to me. But I don't know.
Okay. Like just making sure everything.
Giving yourself permission. I know I'm like impressed with your tech skills.
That's what
this is impressive setup.
I keep looking at the camera to make sure that the camera's still recording and like turning the computer on. And okay. Anyways, so how should I was also trying to, how should I eat when got it. How should I eat when workouts are limited?
Oh yeah. I did like this question because it kind of goes to show that theme of, am I working out to eat or eating to working out?
Right. That, or my freaking biggest pet peeve, especially when I was a coach, of people would be like, oh, gotta earn that turkey dinner. And I would be like, you do not have to earn shit.
No.
Like just, don't earn your food.
And that is like, what are your workouts? Because I'm like, then I feel sad. I'm like, if you're working out just to burn calories, that just sucks. Nobody wants to do that.
Yep.
That's tiring and nobody's going to sustain that. But if you're working out because it makes you feel good, it gives you energy, and maybe you actually enjoy it. Like for me, and this isn't for everyone, the gym is like my playground.
Yep. That's why I don't talk to anybody.
A headspace. Yeah. It's like,
so me and Mary are in the corner and I'm like, nobody talk to me. This is my 1 hour for myself. Like I don't come here. But Ryan, like they love to talk during.
Exactly. There's very social people, which is hard in a group class, right? Because it is like, but it is your time. It's like, it's therapeutic in a way, but I think if somebody hasn't found that yet with their workouts, we're relating what we eat so much to what we're burning. It's not going to last.
Right. Or trying to do multiple workouts a day. Yeah. Like I've seen it all too. Yeah.
Totally. And I think when we see it from an athletic perspective, they're training for something. There's a purpose there. They're not like our kids that might be training for a sport or to get a collegiate scholarship. We have to look at nutrition as fueling their goal, not as manipulating their body, which is a hard concept for, can you imagine, like teenage girls? Like we try to talk about this to them, but it's still our society.
Right.
And they're influenced by the outside world or even comments that relatives make and friends make and friends' moms make and the dads too. But also, you know what I mean? But yeah, anyway, I would say as far as the workout goes, still think you're still a living, working, breathing human being. You still have to eat and fuel your body.
Well, and then you have your metabolic rate of just like what your body burns for when you're literally just living that day. You still have to eat food to be able to do that. So then going back to it of like, if your workouts are limited, I think it just goes back to being more mindful again of like what you're eating, what your goals are, again of like you still need to fuel your body as a human being. But yeah, just maybe being like a little bit more mindful. Again, it's so different for everybody.
Yeah. And finding trust in your body.
Yes.
Like, because I can relate to that too, even like in my 20s when I was a lot more active, and then you evolve and you're like, I'm not as
when
active.
I hit 30, that's when I was like, what the fuck?
It does change. But I think looking at it in terms of trusting, like, if I'm not as active, guess what? I'm probably not going to be as hungry. And if I'm intuitive about that, I can trust my body's going to take care of that.
Yep.
Instead of fighting against it and then having those kind of that cyclical thinking of like, oh, I overate, now I need to not eat. And then my body gets hungry and then I overeat. And then just from a calorie perspective, I end up consuming more when I'm trying to eat less.
So maybe just trying to have like a more consistent eat, or like having a consistent eating schedule could maybe be something too. So, okay, this was also good. All of these are good. I'm just gonna keep saying
love it.
So importance of fiber to help with weight control and how this fits into macros, which actually, is such a good question.
I really like this because I think fiber too gets to be one of those like golden words. It's like, I need to add more fiber to my diet. But when we think about the foods that have fiber,
isn't it a thing that you can eat too much fiber?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially in some of our processed foods, because they add high fiber, like those low carb tortillas.
Okay.
And some of the Quest bar. I'm using Quest. I'm not beating up on Quest, but their ingredients are easy to be like.
This episode is not sponsored by Quest.
I know they're gonna be like. I do like some of their products, but they do add extra fiber to them, or like chicory root fiber and even some of our yogurts. But when we think of fiber, I'm thinking more fruits and vegetables.
Right, like broccoli.
Yes. Yeah. Broccoli is a great example, or whole grain, whole wheat bread. It does keep us fuller longer because it takes longer to digest. Imagine like if I eat a piece of white bread versus my dad always calls it gravel bread, like stuff that has a bunch of nuts and seeds in it. Okay. Yeah.
So like Dave's
Killer Bread, something that's really high in fiber because it's whole wheat. It takes a lot longer to digest, so it keeps us feeling fuller longer.
Interesting.
And two, it gives us more nutrition. Usually white flour is stripped of a lot of its B vitamins and nutrition. Okay. So we don't get as much. But I'll do out a note. We do fortify our flours in the US, which is great because back when we didn't do that, we saw a lot of malnutrition and deficiencies. So I don't want to beat up on processed foods, but even cereals are fortified. So if you feel guilty that your kid's eating cereal in the morning, but they're having it with milk, cow's milk, they're getting some protein. Anyway, that's a whole segue.
Your thought? Travis is obsessed with Fairlife. That's what he is like. Oh, 16 more grams of protein.
Yeah. So the way that they filter it, it is higher in protein. So it is a high quality milk.
But then didn't they get shit for like the way that their cows were?
Which is like a good point. Sometimes we're eating for nutrition and sometimes we're choosing environmentally. And I would say when people are like, should I be eating organic? Which never came up in any of the questions because I think most people understand now that it is kind of more of an environmental decision. There is health impacts, of course.
Right.
But in the quantities that we eat these foods, it's going to be more of an environmental choice. How they treat their animals, how they feed their animals, how they spray their crops, that thing. Okay. That's a whole nother. You know what? I'm going in a segue now.
That's what I'm like. Again,
this is what happens.
This will be a 7-hour podcast. Buckle up. No. Okay. So again.
So fiber and weight control. I didn't really talk about weight control, but I think this is a reoccurring theme is the hunger. And if we can feel fuller longer and less likely to have those hunger spikes, then we're less likely to overeat, which helps with weight control. So when we're eating higher quality foods, we'll be fuller longer.
So I don't even want to start getting into like the whole Ozempic thing, but then I also that like just totally put
that would be a whole nother thing.
Right. Yes. But then that's what like when I was bodybuilding, there wasn't, but what was it? I mean, you could get it at like Total Nutrition, but it was like an appetite suppressant. That's what makes me, like I said, that just.
I bet it was like a high fiber supplement.
Or
maybe.
No, a thermogenic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like. This is the supplement industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yes. So anybody listening to this and is like, I want to become a dietitian to make money, that's a bad idea. Go into the supplement industry. Yeah. That's where all the money is made. But yeah, that sounds like a ripoff for sure.
Yeah. But okay. Anyways, finish your. I'm like, you and I both were like, woo, squirrel. Just wait till the actual real squirrel start coming across.
I know, right?
Start coming across the fence. Okay. But do you feel like you answered
I feel like I did finish that question in terms of hunger and weight control.
Okay.
And importance of fiber. Eat more fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. Eat your fruits and veggies like they taught us in school.
Right.
Okay, 3 more questions. Macros, are they important to track? Quick to the point.
Yeah, we kind of went over this. I don't think they're important to track. Do some people find success tracking them? Yes, because like I said, it is easy to underconsume protein. So if you are wanting to say, just see where you're at, I would start with protein.
Well, and again, it's so different. Are you wanting to put on muscle?
Yes.
Are you wanting to lose weight? Are you wanting to stay again?
And I think someone right after that had maybe asked even like, how is there an easy quick calculation? Very generic numbers could be 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's very, very generic.
Question about protein.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't the one, but I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Just like to kind of roughly estimate, like, how much should I even be eating? Also, ChatGPT, you could put in your anthropometrics, like your age, your body weight, your goals, and it will spit out the same equation that I would use for you. So I'm kind of like, not that ChatGPT is going to take my job.
I'm like, don't take
don't take all of their advice to heart. But if you're just looking for some easy, quick numbers, but I will tell you after, if you've listened to the rest of this podcast, is it helpful? Yes. Is it necessary? No. To track them.
Okay, good to know. That's what the ChatGPT is, like a whole other thing. When I was at LTK Con, I mean, they were talking about like how insane it is, and like it's 3 years ahead of what they like thought it would be at, but it also is not trustworthy. Like, I just want to point that out.
It's just like it's like Wikipedia back in the day, right?
Well, but then they also only take information from the past 3 years, and also once you start using it enough, it starts making the answer that it knows that you want to hear.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, just don't trust everything with ChatGPT.
It's very actually scary.
Yes. It's scary. Crazy.
It's a tool that I think we can't like sleep on, but also be very cognizant. Like with anything on the internet, please be cautious, or AI. And that's a whole nother.
All of it. Okay. So the other question, we already talked about that with the ED. So the final question that we had was thoughts on creatine, taurine supplements for women. I always thought creatine was bad, most worthwhile supplements.
Yeah, that was where my notes at the end. So I'm sorry. Most worthwhile. I always like to close out nutrition conversations with supplements, because they truly are like, once you figure out everything else, they're like the last thing you need to be focusing on, but there can be some very useful ones out there.
Yeah, it can be like a little extra support.
Totally. Yeah. And I think for all of us wanting to be healthier and just needing something convenient, we want to know like what's worth our money to spend on and what's not. I was kind of related to skincare. It's like, all right, tell me what's actually worth it, So in terms of creatine, it actually is the most well-studied supplement out there.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it was when they actually did research on the cell and athletic individuals, and they were like, wow, creatine plays a huge role in power output. Yeah. Let's supplement with it. And they saw the results, and they saw that it actually worked. More money got put into that funding. Okay. That's like my very elementary understanding of it. But in terms of other supplements, the results aren't as drastic. We don't see, it might be... Honestly, it might be just what do you call it when somebody like feels something but it didn't actually happen? Placebo. Okay. Yep. It might be just like a placebo effect, but with creatine, we know
huge. Like, I feel like everybody's talking about it right now.
Yes, like, and there's lots of new research. I think that's why, on brain health and aging and women, and muscle is like, for females, I think is a little bit of a buzzword. So it can help us get more out of our workouts. That's kind of how I want you to think it. Some people think it's a steroid. Yeah.
That was like the biggest, I think, misinterpretation with it. Yes. And then especially, I think it even goes back to of when it was like, oh, lifting weights is bad for, because we're going to get like, but it's like, it actually helps you. Totally. Does the complete opposite. Yeah.
I would say that it's probably one that has the highest misconception, because I even have parents that will come in and they're like, my son wants to start taking creatine. Isn't that a steroid? And I'm like, no, it's not. And it is hard because the Academy of American Pediatrics actually recommends against it in kids 18 and younger. Okay. But I have 16, 17-year-olds who are prepping for collegiate scholarships, and it might be appropriate for them. It's safe, understanding that they already have all the rest of the stuff taken care of.
And you can get creatine from the store. It's not like you have to like go on the black market.
No. Walmart, honestly, is the most reputable source for it.
Okay. I think Trav just got some from Costco too.
Costco sells it now? Of course they do.
I'm 98% sure that was on the cart. I should ask them what brand's
there, because I do... Even Amazon, there's great, but supplements are.
Is there something that you should look for of like, okay, like Thermogenics?
Yeah. Reputable brands, when they're in big box stores, are generally pretty safe because supplements aren't regulated by the FDA.
Yeah.
So if they're third party verified, sometimes they'll have a sticker on them that says third party verification or NSF certified, which means it's safe for sport. So like maybe kids that might get tested in college, you have to find one that's NSF because we don't want contaminants in it.
Okay, that makes sense. I was also listening.
Methamphetamine in the Thermogenics? I don't know. Probably.
I was going to say, on the Skinny Confidential, they were just talking about it too. It was Ivanka Trump, and she said that if you don't drink the creatine right away, it like actually morphs into something different. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe also fact check.
Like if it's like sitting in.
Yeah, like that's what she is like, people take it. And so she said that you want to drink it within the first 10 minutes of then it, like if you put it in the shaker and you're like sipping on it throughout your workout, she said that, and she like had all of this.
The science laid out. I actually haven't heard that.
Yeah. So again, I will fact check that, but I'm 98% sure she was talking about creatine.
I'll also have to look into that because now they have like gummies and pills, which are kind of convenient for like athletes that are on the go and they're already drinking a lot of liquids. But that's interesting. I haven't heard. Which I guess it could be like protein when you cook it.
A name, and it started with an M, but she was like, yeah, it actually doesn't have all the same the
it
full
almost
effects.
Gets denatured in a way.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up, which is because people pack it on the go all the time.
Right. And then they put it in like the little shakers throughout the workout. But she's like, you have to. So she, with her protein smoothie every day, she just like drinks it with her whatever she eats for
and this
breakfast.
is a good example of it's not like this crazy like bodybuilder athlete
Ivanka Trump, like she's just I mean, she's a lot, but
but still it's like creatine can play a role in a lot of different things, and now they're wondering even like brain health and recovery and concussion protocol thing, like lots of cool stuff coming out.
That is another good thing really quick too, of like after post workout, what are like some foods, just like quick easy foods that somebody can eat post workout, because eating after your workout is so important, and I think a lot of people forget about that.
Or they'll be like they're on to the next thing, or maybe dinner isn't in 3 to 4 hours,
right? And then your appetite's gone.
Because caffeine is an appetite suppressant. So if you are, and then you're wondering why you're so hungry later in the day, you probably didn't eat enough earlier. But this is where like convenience, like protein shakes come into play, smoothies that are really easy. I love Greek yogurt because it's got a little bit of protein.
I would even
carbs.
Tell people like a banana with peanut butter.
Peanut butter. It does not need to be crazy. And it does depend on your goals, right? Like for the kids that are doing a workout in the morning and then going to school, I'm like, you need banana, peanut butter, and a protein shake.
Right.
A little bit more. But, and that's a good time to take creatine. But the cool thing about creatine is it just has to be consistent. The timing of it doesn't necessarily matter.
Okay.
All you're doing is just topping off your stores because it's something that occurs naturally in our bodies. So it's not like we are taking a steroid. It's a natural compound. It's found in meat and animal products. So it is completely safe. I think sometimes it can be a water retainer. So if you're not drinking enough water, sometimes we can have some swelling. And there are some people that are non-responders. But again, I want to know, you have to have the exercise stimulus to get the results. So if you're wanting to get stronger or get more out of your workouts, or maybe you're like, I'm not working out, creatine shouldn't even be on your radar right now.
Okay, so if somebody's not working out, don't.
Across the board, in general, it's probably not necessary. We probably have bigger fish to fry,
For sure. Again, focusing on the food portion of it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is, there were so many, that's when I'm like sitting here thinking of like, but I'm like, okay, we need to respect time. You have a little babes, and then my little babes is inside. I got the Ring doorbell notification. But you offered a little special for my list, which I know you're going to get so bombarded. That's why I'm like, be prepared. But I'm like, I have to be a client too. But you offered my audience a special deal, and it was 20%
off the first month. So how I do nutrition is on a month-to-month basis. In the first month, we do 2 visits every other week. So
and it can be virtual as well.
Yes, virtual, in person, and it could even be a one-time thing, because if a lot of these questions didn't get answered, or maybe it brought up more questions for you personally, and which is what we want it to do, is like, oh, for me, this is what I need to know. that this was all very generic nutrition advice.
Well, and like you said, like Travis even had all of his health with blood work and all of that. So like if somebody's wanting to like really deep dive, which is like what I'm so into right now, like I said, with like getting all my blood work done and all of that too for my hormones. So you're offering the 20% off for the first month visit. It would be every other week.
It would basically be 2 visits in that first month. Right. So an initial and a follow-up. And then we can make a plan from there and kind of decide. And I think sometimes people are like, I need the accountability. I want to be meeting with you, depending on what we're working on. Yeah. Right. Like how much change do we need? Somebody like Travis was somebody that I could just tell him what to do and he did it. Like it was literally, I don't want to say it's easy, but it wasn't. But also like some of it, we need to like unpack what we're actually working on. And there is a little bit more psychology and counseling to it. And so it might take a little bit more time, and that's okay.
Yes. Okay. Well, thanks for coming out to the She Shed.
This is so nice in here. I'm like, dang.
Thank you. Yes. Great. I had to completely rearrange for this setup, but it worked out. So I'll be sure to have Anna's info in the show notes. I will have her Instagram. You don't really post anything.
I'm like, okay, this is so funny. That's one of my goals in 2025 is to post more professional stuff online.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, so then she also has Beartooth too, that I guess we totally got off track of that in the beginning too, of you like finally coming on full time at Beartooth and all of that. So then for my locals, so Beartooth used to be CrossFit. I had tried it once as CrossFit and I was like, not for me. Yeah. But now that it's Beartooth Performance, people ask me this all the time on Instagram and I don't know. So then like, what is the difference?
I know that is a really good question. So I would say our emphasis is more in strength and conditioning. So it is not as like we look at CrossFit as a brand. There's specific movements. There's a time component. There's a lot that goes into that brand. But when we look at actual strength and conditioning, like think of, even what our kids are getting in the weight room. We're emphasizing compound movements and strength, but also for us average lay people that just need to get a really good workout.
That's literally me. When I came back, that's what I was like, I don't care about the Olympic lift. I'll do some of the Olympic because I know it's good for you.
But it's not from a performance standpoint.
I'm also not trying to do butterfly pull-ups or whatever the fuck.
Nothing for time. It's like I genuinely just want to be fitter and healthier.
Yes.
That I can learn how
or lift weights. Yeah.
And having some of that foundation, like you came in with a foundation of fitness, so it's like you already know how to do a deadlift, which is a great foundation. But in terms of like some of the more complex movements, we want to introduce those to people that want to learn them when they're ready. But strength is the emphasis and really like learning how to move your body better because most of us want to be able to like keep skiing in our 40s and 50s and
or golfing
is a huge golf is like golf might be our like number one clientele. They're like, I don't want my back to hurt. It's like an example, like today's workout is like a slow and slow.
I was thinking of
anti-rotation, everything's more core, maybe some accessory work that you're working on for 55 minutes and it's scheduled and it's programmed for you. And
that's what I've had so many people like, what app are you using? And I'm like, sorry, it's the gym that I go to. So that could be another business idea for Dane to start selling.
We do have access to our app. We have some people out of town that they just follow the workouts online.
Oh, well,
you don't get the coaching, but you get the workouts.
You get the workouts. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know then.
You can always shoot them our way. Instagram is probably the best way, or our website to get a hold of us.
Yeah. The website is beautiful too. Okay. Well, thanks for an hour and a half.
I feel like I probably could have said way more about nutrition too. So
no, well, I think that's a good thing. And again, keeping it with like the fitness too. I wanted to just like end it with a fitness tip too, because so many people, especially with me getting back into like the 75 soft and things like that,
which I love.
Yes, thank you. The biggest tip that I can give for you if you're looking to get back into a fitness routine is find a workout that you actually enjoy going to. That was my biggest thing of Orange Theory. I was just burnt out on. Orange Theory was great at a different time in my life. However, I also started to learn, like I knew how to half-ass it. And then I knew that I also wasn't getting anything out of it. Whereas that's where I really like Beartooth. That again, it's like, you have the fundamentals, but then you have like the other options of, and again, like I'm not doing a fucking chest to bar or whatever, or like I'm good, or a butterfly.
I mean, she might be doing pull-ups on the playground with Izzy one day, so don't rule it out.
No, but like at the end of the day, Pilates is what brought me back into like falling in love with moving my body again, because for a minute there, like I was just so burnt out. I was so uninspired. And so I wasn't doing anything, and that was like not good for me. So finding Pilates and being able to like fall back in love with that made me like want to look into other area with like getting back into lifting, because lifting is so important, especially for women. So just like finding a workout that you genuinely enjoy going to, and it's one like we've talked about before, like it's not a punishment. It's literally just like an hour out of your day that you get to go and not think about anything else. You're just focusing on your workout. You don't have your kids nagging at you. I mean, there's some gyms that the kids can cut, so that actually doesn't go for everybody.
But it is hard for us because we actually don't have any childcare. It is, we encourage people to come without their kids.
Yes.
And it is a scheduled workout. And I think that's the best thing about group class, and whether it's Orange Theory, Pilates, yoga, whatever it is, you're scheduling it, which I think has
routine.
It really, it is important for us. It's like at work, we put stuff on our calendar. So why aren't we putting our workout?
Well, and that was one of the things too, of like when I worked at Orange Theory, it was like a $12 late fee or whatever. And that's what I was like, oh my God. But guess what? And especially at Pilates, their late fee or a cancel fee is like $20.
Yeah.
I'm already paying $200.
You're like, wait a second.
This is going to cost $500. So anyways, the whole point of that is to find a workout that you truly enjoy, whether that is yoga or going on a walk, working out for 20 minutes and then stretching for 10, like whatever that is. That's my encouragement to you, to like get back into some sort of routine.
For sure.
So all right, Anna.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And like I said, I'll have all of Anna's and Beartooth's information in the notes section of this. And again, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you. Leave a comment, share all the things. Let us know what you took away from it. If you have more questions, like I said, there were so many freaking questions that we got asked. So we might even do a part 2. Maybe we'll have the other half. Well, it's not. Dana's not Anna's husband, but
he's
it's her
my
work
boss.
husband.
Yeah, we do a lot together at the gym, so it's like, all right, we have separate lives.
So that's why I'm like, Anna, come on.
Yeah.
Anyways,
getting him on here to talk about strength, I think would be really cool.
It would be, and especially
we call him Dane the Brain. Like it's actually terrifying how much,
especially for women. That's where we're gonna have to like not talk about kids, not talk about dudes, but just women.
Yes.
So cool. All right. Thanks,
I love it. Thank you.
Hey friend, thank you so much for listening. My goal is to help as many women as I can feel empowered to show up as her best self. If this episode supported you in any way, the best way to show your appreciation is to just screenshot this episode and share it on your social media, or even better, drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. If you want to get more personal, you can reach me on Instagram at @double_Kylie Nelson or at Kylie_Nelson1 on TikTok. See you back here next week.